Okay. So then we start over again. Welcome to the Geek Group. And of course, we have a brief a disclaimer that we now read as part of the Geek Group. So topics, properties, and investments discussed are for educational purposes only. We do not sell securities. Each investor is responsible for their own decisions and must evaluate investments according to their investment risk tolerances. Opinions expressed are those of speakers and no one else. And with that said, now it's my time to introduce, we have two sponsors on the call who happen to be sisters. It's Doris and Alice Ng. And in case you didn't know that, they are sisters. And let's see, I don't know that I have a formal introduction to read about you, but I've known you guys through the Geek Group and through different of the multifamily groups going back to 2000 and probably 16-ish. Possibly. We've actually done, I think Doris invested in one of our syndications in Birmingham, Alabama. That's been over the past few years. And I think we've done, I think you were on a trip, Alice, with us we do a multifamily trip every once in a while where we load up investors / everybody we can find and try to get them into a bus or a van and go to a certain city. We were in Atlanta, I believe, and I think we were looking at that Birmingham property. You were on that trip, so those are always awesome. And then you guys have done, I think you're from Appleton, Wisconsin, both of you, and you have a rich history of business development, investment, and you're definitely moving through the Kiyosaki quadrants of employed, self-employed, business owner, and investor. My knowledge of you, and I doubt we're going to get time to talk about it, but I think your family owned a restaurant that both of you took over and ended up running for some number of years and completely revamping and developing your own management system and handling all aspects of that. And then I think you've moved into real estate and done some very creative, I think you sold your restaurant, you've done some creative investing where you've done all kinds of things from, I think Doris calls it arbitrage, where you're not necessarily purchasing the properties, but taking control of them and using that to put yourself between the owner and the end user and create opportunities there. So principally speaking, we have you on as potential sponsors. So like a lot of us investors, you're always looking for your next great deal. So if students possibly have properties, they would be interested in maybe talking to you about that. And then I think you sort of have just sort of a rich history of moving into the multifamily industry and continuing to take steps forward. And I think right now, Doris, you're on your first, would you call this your syndication that you're in right now? This is your first syndication?
No, this is our fourth.
Fourth. Okay. So
wait.
Apologies.
So, no. You talk about Florida. Florida is a joint venture, actually.
Nice.
So not syndication, but we have 3 deals under contract, and at least 2 of them are going to be syndications.
Okay. So and then because of the way this call is ending up, it might turn out being a little bit more of, I might do some interviewing and sort of giving you topics and letting you talk about things. Would you guys sort of, because what we have is about 30 minutes or so that we can take up, maybe even a little bit more depending on questions and things, but would you guys be willing to go back sort of through your history of business development and maybe even, would you be willing to talk about the restaurant experience? I think it's such a rich history. That's such a difficult business to be successful in that it's a great training ground. So maybe start back there and talk about that. And then we'll transition into real estate. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right. So I'll quickly start on that and Alice will jump on. Like Max said, we do have quite a bit of history because the interesting part is you guys were our very first deal that we jumped on as LP. And so because of that, there's a lot of just trust and partnership and relationship on that part of it. So we've known you for some time personally and also professionally as partners too. But we'll go all the way back to when we started to realize the power of entrepreneurship, leveraged income, and all of that stuff. But we started the restaurant business about 16 years ago.
Just to interrupt quickly, You might even jump back to the segment right before that with Paul Williams and how we kind of all came to know each other and even be into multifamily back then.
Right.
You might jump to that.
Yeah, I'm going to include him in there. He's definitely one of my key guys. You guys were the key people that really got us to real estate, really. So we started the restaurant back in 2003, 16 years ago.
Yep.
And we started that from scratch. We did development. We didn't even realize it because we built the restaurant from ground up. Started that because of just an entrepreneurship type opportunity. My parents were entrepreneurs by trade, and we were given the opportunity. So, of course, Alice, being the visionary type of person that she is, she jumped on it, and we did not even realize the intensity of owning a restaurant and running it. So, of course, sometimes best that you go in there, you know, blinded, because if you knew all the crazy stuff that happens in the restaurant, how little money you make, and all the stress that you get, no one would jump into a restaurant, but we did because we didn't know any better. And so we ran that successfully for about 15 years, and we grew it organically. Started with 25 employees. By the time we exited the business, it was about 60. Scaled it up, had full-time management in there, 7 days a week business. It was a cash cow all the way through. And of course, your first 7 years, you don't think to be a cash cow, but since then we scaled up, and Traction was one of those programs that we implemented into the system. We started to take our key people from Red Lobster, our GM from Red Lobster, our AGM was from Starbucks. So we made sure we found the best of the best and took them in that way. So because of that, we got bored. Alice got bored again and said, well, if we're making this money at the restaurant, let's do something about it. So we got into real estate because, again, her crazy idea that she had that, we could do something more. And then at that time, like most entrepreneurs, we didn't have a very strong 401k, being, again, entrepreneur, you don't have that. So, at this time we're entering into our 30s, we're going in and we're like, okay, our friends are probably halfway in through a 401ks and we have nothing, but we have good cash for the business. So Alice said, I heard, those late night infomercials. I heard that real estate is cool, but I don't know anything about it, but we'll jump in. And okay, we'll jump in. So in 2016, we bought our very first single family home like everybody else did. Bought it full price on the MLS, didn't know anything about it. We saved the 25% down like everybody else. We spent money on rehab, our own money. We didn't know anything about the Burr Method until about, literally, no joke, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Prior to that, everything was pay down principal. We saved, scraped up. Anytime we made money at the restaurant, we just threw it right into real estate. So you could imagine the slow growth we had. And we didn't know anything about wholesalers. It was just straight up talking to a realtor, get me the thing, looks like a good neighborhood, I'll buy it full price. And that's exactly how we ran it for about 10 properties. And then we started to realize the restaurant was at its peak. We ended up selling it because we built it to sell. We knew that. So it was just a perfect timing to go ahead and sell it. We had some employees that wanted to buy. They worked for us for a very long time, and they wanted to kind of take over and take the reins of it. But prior to selling on that, I ended up meeting Max's partner, Paul Williams, because we were part of an entrepreneurship program together. And Paul at the time owned a trucking company, very successful as well. We both knew we wanted to exit the business. We built it, we scaled it to sell it for, of course, profit, and then getting to something else. He did tell me he was in real estate, but little did I know he was like really like a god of real estate. He did everything you can think of in real estate. So he ended up selling or exiting out of his business, and then I ended up exiting 2 years later. We met up again, and he said, I'm in apartments now, and I'm about to close on a 248 unit. I'm like, Paul, what are you doing? I need to know right now, is it legal? And is it all this? Because if it is, I need to know exactly what's going on because I'm exiting out of my business too. So it's like, yeah. Maybe give me a call tomorrow and we'll chat. So not even like 9 o'clock in the morning hits. I call him at 8 o'clock and said, you said I could call you the next day. I need to know exactly what's going on. So he sat down with me. He explained. I didn't understand anything still at this point. He's like, well, we do syndication. They're like, what the hell does that mean? How do I get involved? All I cared about, how I got involved. So I still didn't really know at this point, but again, what I knew was I wanted to get into real estate because I was tired of the 10 that we had. That like, okay, Alice, this is not going anywhere. So we jumped into our first deal after Paul kind of walked us through. And truthfully speaking, he was sending me all these like PPM documents. I didn't know where I needed to sign. I just said, where do I sign? Where to deposit the money? He's like, any questions? I said, I have a lot, but I don't even know what to ask you because I didn't know what any of these paperwork mean. The biggest thing was I knew Paul and I trusted him, and you know, you do whatever you need with my money because supposedly you're going to make money with my money. So that's fine. And the biggest thing we found out was we told Paul, we want to learn more about real estate. Is there any way that we could get involved in some capacity? He's like, well, this is the best way, Doris. You know, you get paid to learn. No other type of education system do you get paid learning. Most of the time it's output, output in terms of financial. You'll get input and knowledge, but that's it. Where are you going to find an opportunity where you get input and output of money? So we're like, yeah, you know, that makes sense. So we jumped in to go ahead and get that experience. And Alice got a chance to go on the asset side and learn the opportunity with them. So from then we scaled up. Then at that point, because of the properties that we had a lot of equity in those because, again, pay down principal. We didn't spend any of the money each time tenants paid us rent. We just plugged it right back in. So we sold some of the underperforming ones, and then we also kept some of the really good ones. So the underperforming, we 1031 out into buying additional properties, whatever it may be. And at this point, we finally learned how to underwrite. Prior to that, we didn't know how to underwrite. It was just, if a tenant can pay for my mortgage, I'm good to go. And there's, you know, obviously I didn't know you could cash flow, make money off real estate too. So we end up getting involved in multifamily underwriting, and we found out that our first property we bought was only making us $57 a month. And mind you, you know, we're two savvy sisters, so we shared everything in half. And that wasn't even enough for a cup of Starbucks coffee for each one of us a day. So you could see how much we're, I guess, losing or not making. At the rate, if that was going to fund our retirement, it probably won't, basically. So multifamily, we jumped in and we started to do some small multis ourselves. We picked a couple of those up, and then we got invited into a GP seat about maybe 6 months later. And usually when you jump into the GP seat, they want money because we didn't have the experience so much. So we were one of their raisers, and we were able to go ahead and raise to support in closing the deal. And then since then, we have been KP, key principals, and we co-sponsors every single deal that we have done since then. To date, we've been in multifamily real estate investing for 3.5 years, and on the active side. And currently, we have about 450 units that we co-lead, sponsor, and support, and all that. Very active in it. Our team is very tight and nimble. And last year, we probably acquired roughly just under 30 million in properties. We'd love to do the 50 to 100 units just because those are usually not in the eyes of a lot of institutions. Institutions like to go for the 200 plus units. We like to sit just in between where a typical person may not be able to take it down him or herself, and we're away from the institutions. So we love working in the $5 to $15 million range for our properties. And we do a combination of joint ventures or syndications, depending on what the situation holds. We've done, like, our smallest syndication is one that we're closing next month, 24 unit, $2.1 million acquisition. We're doing a syndication on that one. All the way to a joint venture that is $6 million where there's 3 partners. So it really kind of depends on the situation on it. Our preference is to do joint ventures because it's, again, quick, lower cost, cut and dry. But we also know why we do syndications as well. So we do those as well. But like, for example, this Florida property that we took on, it's a joint venture. It's a $9.5 million raise that we had to go ahead and do in 2.5 weeks. By far my toughest deal I've ever done. It certainly won't be the last, but we picked it up. We closed in 2.5 weeks, raised about just under $10 million for it. And this one only has about 6 partners. And we JV'd it. So it really depends on the deal at the end of the day. So I'll let Alice finish up on the other half of us.
I was going to say, I think Doris kind of summed up everything. But to her point, that very first property, we actually called that the Starbucks house because we couldn't even afford a cup of coffee a day. So that was our very first. So looking back, someone went to us like, that was, to us, that was a big failure. But if we kind of let that stop us, we wouldn't be here we are today. So it's one of those things where I look back at that house now, like Doris was mentioning, we just learned about the Burr Method. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Burr Method or not. We've just found that out about 3 years ago.
Tell us more about that. Explain to us, Alice. Tell us more about that.
So the Burr Method works really well in smaller deals, or I mean, even the syndication deals is kind of like a big, gigantic Burr in that way. So what you do is you buy this property, you end up rehabbing it, and then you rent it, and then you end up refinancing and you repeat. So that's pretty much what all that BRRRR stands for, right? But I didn't even know about it. I think I went to a RIA meeting or meetup locally because we weren't even part of any real estate like meetups back then when we first started. I don't think real estate meetups were even a thing back then. I don't know, but either way, I discovered this RIA group locally in town, and I literally got on the phone. I said, "Oh my goodness, Doris, we've been doing real estate wrong the whole time." And then she's like, "Why?" I said, "I was wondering how someone half my age was able to like literally build their net worth so much faster. And here, like I've been an entrepreneur for 17 years and we're not even half as close as where he's at." And it turns out that he was using a method called Burr. And I mean, that was just like light bulbs just bursting. And here, everybody thought that was normal and they knew about it. So sometimes you have no idea what you don't know. It's like it's like you look back and those are one of those things where you're like, wow, I wish someone would have told me this a couple of years back. We wouldn't be where we're at today.
Nice. Okay, that's awesome. And just to try to clarify, so we're talking about Burr, like BRRR, and I think it's buy, rehab, rent, refi, and repeat.
And repeat. Yes.
Yep.
And it's cold outside behind your window, so it's like Burr.
Exactly.
Right,
Okay. Nice. Okay, that's awesome. Okay, so tell us. So thank you for all that. That's great, and I appreciate you going back through all that. Tell us about your education, your mentors. I mean, I would love it if you want to throw in details like what you paid for it. All of us have sort of been. I was commenting that I thought I had met the Savvy Sisters through the Lindahl group, which I came up through, but then here I am in Orlando at a Rod Cleef event, and there's the two Savvy Sisters up on stage. And so I'm like, wait a second, tell us how all that worked out.
Well, our very first real estate experience was, like Doris said, it was through like Dean Graziosi's late night thing, and I went to one of his boot camp, and then we end up signing up with his program, but we absolutely did nothing with it because we're so busy at the restaurant. So that was whatever, I don't even know how much that was, but that was literally money just like flushed down the toilet.
Yeah, I didn't know it was like 20,000 that we spent on that one.
So not saying that his program doesn't work, or like we honestly didn't put the work behind it, right?
And who was that again? Who was that one?
With Dean Graziosi.
Oh, Dean Grazio. Got it.
Yeah, when he was still in the real estate space. I mean, he's more into self-development now. I mean, we took some pointers from that, but honestly, we didn't really utilize the program to its finest, because had we did, we wouldn't be buying a Starbucks house and splitting $57 a person, right, a month. But what did we do? I think a couple of years ago, we right when we met, I think Paul was that before or after Doris? I can't remember when we joined. We were in Rod's program. Was it
no, we joined Rod's program in 2018, right after we sold. he was in, I live in Chicago. Part of my residence is in Chicago. So he happened to be in Chicago and signed us up. It was like a buy one, get one kind of thing. We signed up for the event. He was still very new into the space. And we signed up for his mentorship program. And that at the time was about $15,000 to sign up. And that one, we did something with it only because we had a property already under contract and we didn't know where to go. We had a multifamily under contract. Like, what do we do now? You know? So we went to him, and the reason why we liked him is because he was so new. We had direct access to him. It was basically calling his cell phone. His brother was our coach, and it was just very hands-on. So to this day, he still knows us. I still have his personal number and all that. Then I got a hold of Paul, and Paul has been very active in the real estate space with us. And he invited me to Lindahl, and that's how I met you, Max. So he invited me to Lindahl's program, the partnership program. I think that ticket in there is about $800 a person, the partnership one. Mm-hmm. And went to that one, met a ton of people as well. And, in the real estate space, it's all about relationship. I don't care what they say. It's still old school. A lot of business is done on a handshake. Even though they say sign all these documents, get all these things in place. At the end of the day, if you don't know somebody in person, you just don't do a deal with them. It's just that simple. So we went to that, met a ton of people, kept in contact with them, and then following year, pandemic hit. So really kind of dried up a lot of opportunities. And we stayed in touch with Rod's group, and we formed probably 3 different partnerships with his students that we partnered up and we took down deals together. And so all in all, I think for us, we probably in the real estate space, we just alone in real estate is probably in that 50, 60,000 that we spend on just different coaching programs, learning styles, country club fees is what they call you to kind of be in their network. But as far as education, a mindset, in addition to real estate, you're easily looking at probably $250,000 that we probably spend. A lot of different mastermind groups we join. Every year, we probably go to at least 2 to 4 seminars. And we float around, like, we're going to go to Joe Fairless in a couple weeks. So we're going out there, and that one is about $800 a ticket.
I will see you there. I got my room.
Oh, you're going out?
Yeah, at the Gaylord Resort. Yeah. In fact, my wife will be there too. You guys can meet my wife, so that'd be awesome. Yeah. And I highly encourage that kind of activity. So tell us more. Keep talking.
Oh yeah. So the reason, again, partnership is very, very important because that's exactly how I picked up this Florida property. And this has been one of my recent success stories on it, because literally if it's not at the right place at the right time with the right people, this will never happen. I'm just going to repeat this quick because Max was watching me throughout this whole process. I was like all nervous and scared and excited all at the same time. So at Rod's boot camp, I was there. Alice and I were there for the weekend. We had some partners fly in as well. So our partners are very organic when they build their real estate business. They didn't know that there was this whole other arena of real estate people that could network and do deals together. So he did everything by himself, which was nothing wrong. But can you imagine the power of just network, how he could build? And you met him, Max, his name Lee. So anyway, so we get down there, and we happened to just on Saturday, after we spoke, Alice and I were speaking on Friday and Saturday there. After we spoke, we decided to have lunch there. Just out of the blue, we sat next to this couple who were wholesalers. And, we introduced ourselves, and they said, I've met you girls before. You guys were on Clubhouse. I think Charmaine said she's really into social media. Well, we are not so much in social media, but somehow we came across her. But anyway, she's like, I met you girls on, Clubhouse during the pandemic, and it's so great to meet you in person. Alice and I are like, okay, I don't remember you, but thanks for, remembering us. So we sat down, we chatted, and the husband said, I came across this 48 unit in Florida. We're from Tampa, and I really like this property. I think it's really awesome, but I just don't know how to take it down. I take a look at it. I'm like, these are gorgeous. I've never had such young properties, this is amazing. It's a 2007 build, right? So I was like, this is really nice. What do you know about the area? Oh, I think it's great. It's right by the Kennedy Space Center. SpaceX is going in there. All the space activities going there. Blue Origin is here. I'm like, that's interesting. So I tapped over to Lee, hey, you got to check this thing out because I like the look of this property. I just don't know the area. So he's like, let me take a look. He looks at it, said, I like this. Anything we could do to schedule a site visit. And of course, the guy says, give me a minute. And he calls up and said, tomorrow, let's go out tomorrow. And I completely missed Rod's event on Sunday. Completely. Alice had to actually finish up the talking. So we miss it, and then we go out there, and of course, we fell in love with it, and that's when I was updating Max on it. And he's like, what are you doing, Doris? So, like, so we found this thing. I think we're going to go under contract with it. Monday, we go under contract just as we're leaving Rod's event. We go under contract, and then, of course, the seller's like, you got to go hard on the money. I'm like, what? We just saw we don't even have time for DD. They're like $500,000 hard. Right. Okay. This is a, you know, whoa, this is a lot, you know, I mean, losing $500,000 is not that big of a deal, but it is a very big deal too. You know, that could buy me a lot of properties. So we renegotiated with the seller and we said, okay, $250,000, we could go hard on $250,000 and that's pretty much it. And he said, fine, but only if you show proof of funds. I'm like, oh, shoot now. So now we're trying to show proof of fund of 10 million. So between all our partners, we're like, oh my God, we're not even close. What can we do? And then so we went out, and again, this is all relationship building. You know, we went out and we spoke to a lot of our associates, partners, and other deals, and say, hey, you got to trust me on this thing, but do you mind showing 3 million on your balance sheet for me? You mind showing 2 million on your balance sheet? You mind, like, everybody just pulled in. Monday at 10 p.m., I got everybody's proof of funds in, shot it out to them, and they said, fine, we'll open up the thing, sign the PSA by Tuesday. So that's how quickly it went. And they wanted to close by December 20th because the owner, his son was managing the property and his son was in jail, and the son gets out of jail by then. So the dad basically wants to say, sorry, I sold the business. You can't manage it, because he was just driving it to the ground. It was 40% vacant. So there's no way we could get a bank loan just because of the vacancy level. But at the same time, no bank is going to lend in 2.5 weeks either. So we try to go through hard money. The hard money folks said, you got to give me at least 3 weeks on this. If this is an $8.5 million purchase price plus CapEx and all of that closing costs, it came out to $9.5 million. So they're like, there's no way I can like do an appraisal even to get you through that. So, okay, we said, scratch that out. Hard money doesn't work. Bank doesn't work. Where else are we going to go? We're going to have to raise it all the money now. So we went out there and we raised. Little do you know, when you have a really good deal, people will fund. And so we, there's about 5 GPs in this deal, and we just went out there and we said, okay, you got this, you got that. Everybody had a role. And everybody worked 16-hour days for the last 2 weeks just getting everything done. I happened to fall into the role of acquisition. So it was just a lot of structuring deals, attorney back and forth, working with different investors, getting the money pooled in. And then meanwhile, we have 2 other partners just out there raising, you know, how much you got, how much you got. And we couldn't raise 50,000. That's usually our standard is 50,000. Can you imagine raising 50,000 on $9.5 million? It's going to like kill me by the end of it. So we had to like bump it up and say 7 figures only, you know, and it was just so shallow of me to even say that, because I am a $50,000 raiser. You know, usually my investors are 50 to 100,000. So we had an investor come in at 5 million, another one at 1.5 million. And then finally we had an investor who was my cousin. He's like, I have $1 million on it, but I just my first time investing with you, Doris. Can I just go in $500,000? I'm like, oh my God, you're killing me. So we were missing a little bit of it. So I told him, I'm going to hold you off to the side. Let me go ahead and try to raise 7 figures. And we end up able to raise that. His last $500,000 came through. And then we had one more guy that said, I'll put in 3. And we're like, cut, it's done, you know? So, I mean, it's just very interesting when you start to realize that the deal is that good, people are going to fight to get in, actually, believe it or not. So we were literally raising all the way to the finish line. December 20th, I remember I was at the closing table for 4 hours because of the wiring and all the leftover, you know, just all that whole nuance on it. So what we learned out of this whole deal was it is very true. If you got a good deal, money will come your way. Now, I wouldn't say never worry about money, but that should not be the first thing you worry about. We learned out the power of a team, because if we were, again, one person short, it wouldn't have worked, because I was so busy, tied up with just getting all the acquisition. there was 3 different attorneys that we're working with, like a lending type of attorney, because we had one partner, very experienced operator, obviously. So they made us go through a lot of loopholes. And then we had our own attorney, and then the local attorney here, you know. So you're dealing with 3 different, a $90,000 legal fee bill at the very end. You could imagine all the paper pushing going around there. And so we learned the power of a team, why it's important to have all of us in it. And you learn to level up with the team even more, because usually you realize that your team is that strong through the challenges you experience together. Kind of like any other marriage relationships and all that stuff. You come out stronger when you have differences and different challenges. So after that, we kind of discussed what happened on this whole deal. And we realized, you know what, this is simply amazing. We put the trust in one another. We talked about it too, because I said, it's only because you that I did it, Lee, because you said you could operate and stabilize it. Because of no doors, you said you could raise the money. And then we went back to another person, like, because you said you're going to do it, I'm going to do it, and we're going to do it. We're all going to go hard on our money. And if we lose it together. And so it turns out that, you know, each of us had that full support of one another, and we trust the process. And we also understand that if it didn't work, that we're going to lose the money. So at the end of the day, we're still partners into probably a couple more deals coming up ahead. So that's probably how you build that. If you want to know how you build partnerships too, that's exactly how you build it at that point. But here it is now. We have our youngest asset, 2007 build, just cosmetics. It's beautiful. I've been showing so many different investors in Florida here. If you guys happen to be floating down here, I'd love to go ahead and show you the asset. But I'm actually saying, like I said, one of the units we're converting of the 48 units, we're doing 4 of them to be corporate housing, furnished housing. If those of you that know it, it's like an in-between Airbnb / long-term. So we're able to double up on rent, and that's exactly what Max was saying. We do a lot of different arbitrage methods of doing that to drive up NOI, to raise it, foresee appreciation, and bring up the level of the value of the property to be higher. So right now with this property, for example, we bought it for $8.5 million. It's roughly worth, at the first round of refi, we're refining right now, it'll probably come to a 9.2 valuation. And then once it's fully done, we're probably looking at anywhere from a 10, as much as 12 million, but it'd probably be 10, 11 million in between that. So it's that risk factor that you take. And we're super excited that we did take that risk, but it's a long road ahead of us because we have a couple of refis to go ahead and finish up. And most importantly, our investor trusted in us and the deal. So that's going to go along with every other deal that we do now. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's amazing. I'm sorry to make you probably didn't think you'd be talking so much, but this is awesome, and I thank you for it. So talk to us about your arbitrage experiences. In other words, you know, do you really need to buy the property, or how can you just control it to do the same thing that we might like to do, which is probably a cash flow issue? What?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I could go into the arbitrage a little bit. We have currently like 4 or 5 units, I think, arbitrage that we're currently working on. So you're right, Max. You don't necessarily have to own the property at all. Our model, at least the arbitrage units that we kind of worked on, was landlords that happened to be very tired of, you know, dealing with tenants. So it was kind of easy during the pandemic in that aspect. So we had landlords that remodeled the units, and they were kind of afraid to like re-rent it to tenants just because there was no eviction, it was not guaranteed rent, and all this like horror stories that was out there. So we just kind of asked them like, hey, if you're interested, if we rent it, if we kind of guarantee rent for you, and if you had any issues, you just call us. And we told them exactly what we're doing with it, and they were okay with it. And we're like, okay, cool. And so we kind of did that for a little bit of cash flow, like Max was saying, it's more of a cash flow thing. It is a little bit more active, but it was more of, wow, I could generate an extra whatever, like the cash flow amount. We shoot for like a net of like $1,000 a door in order for it to make it worth your time. If it doesn't net $1,000 a door, then it really is not worth your time, you know, to do it. So that's kind of what we shoot for, was $1,000 net after all your utilities are paid, furnishing, however you're allocating how many months it takes on to pay that down. But yeah, it's a great cash flow model. And if you're if the landlord allows you to do it, like totally take advantage of it, and you don't even have to own it. So that's anything that happens, like if a heater goes out, guess what? You call the landlord and they fix it. So
Okay, that's awesome. But give us some specifics on those 4 units, for example. What did you lease them for? What do you release them for? What did your furniture cost? How do you find your tenants? That type of thing.
so I could have Doris do a lot of that.
All right, so yeah, like Alice said, there's a division of our company called Simply Sweet Living, and that focuses just on furnished housing. So that's the difference of it. So typically when we arbitrage, we pay market rent. So we are very specific with our criteria, meaning the unit has to be updated. It has to be clean, a good neighborhood, and that kind of stuff. We focus a lot on construction and travel nurses. So these are basically people that want sort of more of like a shorter term rental, but they're month to month. So they're not vacation rentals. Okay, we don't do vacation rentals. Well, I don't say that now necessarily because we just picked our first Airbnb. We just closed on our first Airbnb, but we'll talk about that later. But this one, so we would just basically tell the owner that, like Alice said, we are your tenants. You're guaranteed to get paid on the first. We own and operate basically like a property manager. We operate the thing, so you have full trust that we're not going to mess it up. We vet the tenants out for you. In return, we typically go out and find the tenant that needs something that's furnished. So for example, nurses or construction, those are our 2 that we like, we focus on. So one of the properties we're renting, we actually have 2 arbitrageurs in Brooklyn, New York. We will never own anything in New York because it's so darn expensive. However, we end up renting it from an owner. He owned the property outright. He doesn't really he doesn't want to deal with tenants anymore. He just wants to deal with one person, and that's us. So we rent out each unit for $1,200 for 2-bedroom, 1 bath. We're out there renting right now, back out for $2,500 a unit. So that's why Alice said that we like to kind of cash flow roughly about $1,000. And these people are travel nurses. They're not asking you to go ahead and furnish to the moons and to the nines like Airbnb is. There's no theme. There's no beach theme. There's no ski theme, nothing. It's just, we're very cookie cutter. We get a certain type of bed, certain mattress, dresser. It's just boom, 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 done. Costs us about $3,500 to furnish a 700 square feet place. And then we're furnishing this one. This one is costing close to about $7,000 for 1,500 square feet space. So you can kind of take that estimate. So very cookie cutter. And we go out there and we rent out to them because they are essentially looking for a place to stay for anywhere from 1 to 12 months is what the most we've seen, but generally is like 3 to 6 months. So you'll get about 4 tenants a year up to for each unit. And these people, like I said, they're usually travel nurses, and they have a very high per diem because one of our requirements is you have to show us your offer letter. So we found out that these nurses were getting per diem, living, not even meal, living per diems of $3,000 a month. We're like, oh shit, I'm renting it out for this much and they're still making money tax free. So that's why they're at a win. I thought I was winning. They are really winning, these people. So, and then what is it? So we basically rent out to them, and when we rent, we just only rent for the time that your offer letter is there. So they would say, offer letter, you're hired from January to March. We would take you on for that, and that's it. Really simple. And if you had pets, we love pets. We always charge them a $500 non-refundable. So if you're staying for 3 months, where else can you make an extra $500 for someone staying 3 months? On top of that, we charge you a $150 cleaning fee. And if you have a pet, another $150. So right out of the gate, I get $800 from you. So that's how we run it. And that's per pet. So sometimes you have 2, whatever it is. Generally, you don't have more than 2, but that's it. And what we love about these people is they're always working. They're never home. So our utility bill is all inclusive, but average price is anywhere from $50 to $100. So again, your Airbnb families, they're watching Netflix, they're turning everything on, cooking everything. These people don't, because they're always working. And our biggest competitors to those are your extended stay hotels, home to suites, and all of that. Now, most people would ask us, why don't they just rent over at a Marriott? Because they get points and all that fun jazz. But do you not realize that most of these places don't have full-on kitchens? You're renting a 400 square feet space of just a little mini induction stove. So if I'm going to live at a place for 3 months, I want to have a house. I want to have a separation of my bedroom and my living room where I can just go in and out and actually have my own space. So we always go under 20% under than what these places are charging, and a bigger space. It's basically guaranteed. Right now, all these spaces still don't have a full-on kitchen. And we have in-unit washer and dryer. Those are the two big things that has to work in these units. So because of that, as a person that's traveling, you probably will want more of a house type situation as opposed to staying in a hotel if you're living that long. So that's how we still, at the end of the day, we still come out ahead. So then we run 16 of our own units already. Prior to arbitraging, we already have 16 of our own units, and we're expanding out to another 40 units. We're converting a lot of our long-term rentals into corporate housing now. So the 4 that we took on, same thing. We found out that there was a need. So usually those places are our test market. So we'll rent from somebody, like Alice said, it's really risk-free. We'll rent from an owner for a year, and we tell them exactly this is what we do. And we even offer them, we even tell the owner, you have 2 choices with us. Choice number 1, where your tenant will guarantee you that market rent. And then whatever I make on my side, it's up to me. I furnish it, I do everything. You don't have to worry. That's option 1. Option 2 is we go halvesies on this thing. You don't charge rent. I'll cover for the furnishings, and whatever we get paid for rent, we divide it in half. So you pay your mortgage and I pay that. There could be a potential upside. It's almost like your Class A and Class B investors, like your fixed income investors or your Class B, which get equity. So usually they choose A because why? They don't want to deal with it. If they want to deal with it, they would have done what we did. We tell them this is how we do it. And they're like, no, girls, this is too much work. You're right. It is a lot of work, but that's also how we make our money. So our Milwaukee ones, we have 2 in Milwaukee. We pay her $1,400 for rent, the owner. We are actually renting it out for $3,000, and the other one right now is listed for $3,500. So if you really want to make cash flow, way better than owning a property, because what do you normally do when you underwrite? As long as I can cash flow about $200 to $400 a unit after paying everything out, I'm golden. Well, I don't even own the darn thing, and I'm cash flowing anywhere from $7,000 to $1,000 a month, and I don't own the property. Worst case I lose out on is the furnishings. And even then, Facebook Marketplace has been our best friend since we started that. We pick up lamps for $25, it's just crazy, So if you really want to save money, if you're trying to work on a budget, Facebook Marketplace is the best way to go to furnish it. And then we started doing it in the Milwaukee one. We did that in New York. We have that. And then we started doing that within our own multifamily now. So this 48 unit we're doing, we're actually closing on a 51 unit as well. That one probably implement, a few 5 to 10% of those units to be part of it as well. And that's one of those perfect examples that we could jack up the NOI then. Like this one in Florida, market rent is $1,600 to rent it out to a normal person. We're renting it for $3,500. So that's just to be safe kind of thing. So you could imagine the rent bump that we have so we can increase that NOI. And when they evaluate our business, it's obviously different. And this is off another side note, but we found out we did a full cycle on one of our corporate housing, and this is our success story on it. And we didn't know it was going to be that good until we got it. So Alice and I picked up a 6 unit during the pandemic. We bought it for $40,000 a door, which was pretty inexpensive already at the time. The owner was renting it out for $550 a month, normal rent, which is fine. We spent about $130,000 doing a full gut rehab on all 6 units, so it looks beautiful. Late into the pandemic, we decided to go ahead and do corporate housing because we wanted to avoid the eviction memorandum and all that. We started renting it out at $1,200 a door. And then these people were flocking in, and we were like, what is going on? And we started looking at their offer letters, and they're like getting paid $2,500 to like $3,500 a month in per diem. So we slowly jacked it up. We went from $1,200 to $1,600 to $1,800 to $1,900. Right now, at this point, we got up to $2,000 a month in our 6th unit. So when I went to refinance it, I just refinanced it about 3 weeks ago. I went to refinance it, and my banker was like, wait a minute. So you're rent rolling like over 12 grand a month on a 6 unit? Like, yeah. What is going on? And I told him, he's like, are you doing a vacation rental? No. These are my leases. You see my tenants said they're going to pay $1,900 or $2,000 for it. And he's like, okay, this is funny now. So then I told him I furnish it. He's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And he's like, Doris, I'm going to have to not just run it as real estate, I'm going to have to run it as a business. So anyway, we just got our appraisal back. I kid you not. This property is valued at $840,000 or $140,000 a door. We bought it for $40 just about a year and a half ago. So you could see the insane amount of equity it allowed us to build. We took all our money out. This is like the best Burr we have ever done. And that's how we tell you unit count does not matter. As long as you get a deal going, that's all that matters. So now this is also the first time the banker asked me, how much do you want? I told him I want a cash out refi. Normally, your common response to me is like 80% or whatever it is. You could tell me what I cap off at. And he's like, well, how much do you want? I'm like, what do you mean? Because I just want to know how much I can get. It's like, well, just what were you thinking? I'm like, I don't know, like 300,000, 360, just give me back my money, And he's like, yeah, I'll give you that. Okay, that's it. He said, yeah, we could do that for you. And then little did I know the appraised value was like 840. So we still have sizable equity in the deal at this point after we took all our money back out. So this is our best Burr ever that we have ever done. But he counted as both. And we told him, is that normal for you to do? And he's like, this is a business that you're running. So it's almost like owning a restaurant. You have the operation system and you happen to own the real estate that you operate on. So we're going to evaluate both. So they came out at $140,000 a door. So then the light came on. So we have a 20 unit in Arkansas, and it so happens to be literally across the street from the hospital. Literally, that you just open your door and you go. So prior to, we bought that last July for $1.2 million, and we're in the process of almost done with the rehab, but we're advertising that to be $1,900. For 20 units. So you can imagine the income on that bad boy. So we are actually forecasting it to be worth about $2.7 million if it followed the same format as our 6 unit. We bought this, we only put cash injection of $600,000 in this thing. So everybody is making money. And this is one of those syndications that we did that that we did a 50-50 split with our LPs. So as GPs, we're getting all of that. On top of that, we asked for a 10% promote once we give you your initial dollar back. So by the end of this whole thing, it's a 2-year cycle for this that we're forecasting. We would have 60% equity in the deal as GPs. And there's 5 GPs in this, and we have the highest. So Alice and I own 23% shares in this deal. So for that, it's going to sit pretty comfortable on that. But anyway, that hasn't been actual full cycle. But if it repeats our 6 unit, it's going to go the same way. And then I spoke to Lee, yesterday, and I said, we're only doing 4 units here in Florida. If this thing takes off again, do you want to do corporate housing on all 48 again? And he's like, let's do this. So that's going to be probably phase 3, because we're poised to buy out our largest partner. We already had an agreement right from the very beginning. We told him that his hold was only 3 years. He said, I'm fine holding 3 years. Just give me a certain equity multiple, then you could buy me out, give me my money, and then you guys could do whatever you want to do. So that's the plan, is probably after year 3, we'll run it as corporate housing. Once we get these 4 solidified and it's going, we'll run that. And because of that, we actually took on a full-size sales team now. Full-time sales team that just work on scoping out, just doing sales calls to different tenants, working with different hospitals. We're doing master leases now. That's the best thing to do. We actually started a master lease to construction companies where they just do essentially their service apartment. So we just rent to them for as long as they want to. They're paying full dollar amount price. And then whenever they have employees coming in, they would just house them. So in some occasions, there's nobody living in those apartments. And then I had another friend who was even more brilliant. He's like, Doris, you should do this. We haven't done it yet, but he's done it. So what he does is he master leases it out to a company. They pay him the money. And he's in Minneapolis, right? He's not too far from the Viking Stadium. So he told the company during Viking games, if your employees are not staying in the units, do you mind if I rent it back out from you? I'll pay you the price that I did. So he's going out there giving a discount to his master lease company. In return, he's going out there advertising on Airbnb for $300 a night for a Viking game. I never thought of that one. That's cool. So then he said, yeah, he'll rent it out for that weekend just for the Vikings. So now the master lease client is happy because they pay a little less on their rent. Now my friend is happy because he just not only made the master lease money, got a little bit of a discount, but now he just made even more money on it. So he's like, try it out, talk to your tenants and see if they're willing to do that. I've never tried it, but that's another thing. So we'll implement that. But that's the thing is like, you just don't know. And that's where it was a game changer for us, that we realized running a corporate housing or furnished housing division, you literally can operate double. So you can like take on a 10 unit, take an income like a 20 unit, basically. So that's why Alice and I believe in is not about the unit count. All it is how much can each unit produce for me and how hard can they work for me. So we found that out, and we're okay being 100 units only or 200 units, because if each one can produce the same amount, I'd rather run that lean and mean. So that's us in a nutshell.
Okay, I better stop you right now because we have 15 minutes left, and we have a very rigorous rule that we end on time. All right.
Okay.
So,
Perfect.
Let's take some questions. Tyler's got a hand up. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah.
I had to make sure I snuck my hand in there first because there are a lot of talking points there. I have to apologize. I missed maybe 20 minutes of that or so. I had an emergency. But going after the rental arbitrage, most recent topic, I feel like I'm back in school again. I don't know if you guys remember, being in elementary school and you have like the one or two cool kids of the class and then everyone else flocks to them and wants to be their friend. I feel like that's you guys.
Aw, thanks.
Oh, that's so cute.
I've heard about rental arbitrage. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Rob Built, but he's been on some Bigger Pockets podcasts. He has his own YouTube channel. He, among other things, uses that strategy. And I don't know if it was coined by him, but I feel like a lot of what you guys have talked about, I have learned from him talking about that. And so I've never done that myself, but I'm familiar with the concept. And so I have a lot of questions if that's okay.
Sure.
Let's see. First of all, how do you find the owners that are okay with that? Because I would imagine quite a few owners are probably not okay. So how do you pick and choose, or is it more or less just cold calling and until you get a yes?
You just talk to people, right? You talk to someone who said, "Oh, I'm getting ready to like lease out my apartment, or I'm getting ready to lease out that house," and that's how the conversation honestly starts.
So just as if you were trying to rent that out yourself, whether you're finding it on apartments.com or Craigslist, but asking as if you were the renter, but then saying, "Oh, by the way, we're also doing this strategy."
Yeah, it works better with what I call like the mom and pop landlords more so than the institutions.
Sure.
So it definitely works better with the mom and pop landlords.
Okay.
To that aspect. And, when you say Airbnb, they kind of shy away, right? Because of the horror stories and whatnot. But now when you say, "Oh yeah, we do corporate rentals," that's very different. If you rent to medical professionals, we rent to traveling professionals, that also like the light bulb just changes for them. For whatever reason, don't say Airbnb, to them right off the bat, because they'll probably shut you down and say no. At least that's in my experience. I can't speak for everybody, but the minute we say that we rent to traveling professionals, then it was a different like tone. So
right, the subtle nuances of communication there. Yeah. Next quick question. So I actually prefaced to the question. I stayed in something very similar to that for 2 months last summer here in Denver again, when I first took over my assisted living homes here. And so it was right about the exact same thing as you guys are describing. I think it was maybe $2,500 or $2,700 a month, fully furnished. It was mom and pop owned, and the owner physically had to come in and have me sign the month-to-month rental agreement and show me around the unit because of Denver regulations. In Denver proper, you're not allowed to Airbnb or short-term rental. But the second you go over the 30-day mark, it's a different story. So I guess my question here is, for you guys, do you need to have someone physically there to check your tenant in and to sign the documents in person? Or is that something that you can do entirely electronic and have a keypad where they type in their passcode and you guys are pretty hands-off?
Yeah, I haven't met a lot of my tenants. And they, a lot of people talk about spams. You just have to make sure they trust you, that you have that open communication. But yeah, everything is done on a DocuSign. They sign the lease on DocuSign. They pay their rent through ACH, through apartments.com is the platform that we run the money, and it does an auto withdrawals out of their account. So yeah, and then we text back and forth. If they need anything, they usually text us. But now we have a full team that actually texts them. It's like a hospitality courtesy team that makes sure they get everything that they want. And from our experience of doing this the last year and a half, going into 2 years, never had delinquencies. I'm going to say knock on wood, but no delinquencies. Everybody's paid on time. Everybody has left the units fairly decent. We may have one instance where she was just, I wouldn't say she was a little bit more dirty, I guess, or she didn't really clean for the 3 months that she was there, but that's it. I mean, there's no anything to a point leading to where the apartment had to be completely redone. No.
Sure. Awesome. And I'm sorry, Alice, keep going.
No, I was going to say, to Doris's point, we also, because we sign regular month-to-month leases, we also ask all the tenants to have renter's insurance. So that's also a requirement of ours, that they have to have renter's insurance, just like any other tenant. So.
Awesome. Last but not least, buying criteria. Besides being close to, a hospital or something like that, but buying criteria per market, what makes you say, hey, I want to go into that market?
So I'm going to give you an awesome tip. This is probably the $1 million tip. So everybody listen out, right? If you see any hotels out there that's inn and suites behind the name, so the average stay of those hotels, it's not you and I that stay there for a week or a weekend. Their average stay is 76 nights per guest. So that's what they target. So if you see an influx of those inn and suite hotels, you know that they've done research on it. They're not going to put a multi-million-dollar hotel and not do the research behind it, right? So even in our local market in Appleton, I'm there, right before, during the pandemic, even they were still building for these inn and suites. So we already knew, that's a huge market already. I mean, you don't build four in a town of 100,000 people, right? And pray that, they're going to come. So that's going to be your biggest tip, is that. Also, you want to buy, like you're buying multifamily, anywhere there's like neighborhoods and community. So you look at your franchise stores coming in, you look at transportation, you look at, the workforce there. So everything you do for multifamily, you do, but now we're going to tack in that you're going to look for the hotels.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you both.
Okay, who else we got?
I was going to ask, and you may have just answered that question to Tyler. I wasn't really clear if that's where he was thinking what I'm about to ask. When you buy a property and you're considering doing an Airbnb, other than obvious things like location, what other things do you consider, rather that's going to be doable to make it profitable or not?
So to your point, Darnell, we buy based on the numbers of long-term rental. So any of our assets that we pick up, we don't base the numbers necessarily on short-term rental or corporate housing. So if it doesn't work for the long-term housing, like how you underwrite a deal for your multifamily, we won't buy it either. It has to work for that. And then it's icing on the cake if it happens to, be able to do corporate housing or short-term rental. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So for our 6th unit, we had no intentions of doing that. It just worked out that we did, and it just blew it out. Yeah.
Okay.
It surprised us too. That's why we were so shocked.
Okay. Thank you.
On the 6 units, since you're renting to, are they all nurses or they're a combination of nurses and construction?
They're mainly nurses. There's one construction, and that was a master lease. Yeah, that it's a company that end up renting it. Yeah.
So how is it far from the hospitals, or all these nurses work at different hospitals?
They're all different, and actually, one of our tenants used to drive an hour to the hospital.
Wow.
Where she because there was no furnished housing for her, so that's why we told her, we warned her, it's 50 miles one way, and she, yeah, I know, I could use some downtime when I'm driving to and from. Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Wait, you think?
Yeah, so actually right now our Brooklyn one is not too far from Maimonides Hospital. We're literally like half a mile from Maimonides.
I'm laughing because in my past life I worked for New York University. They own Maimonides Hospital.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's it's one of the best ones in Brooklyn. So it just worked out for us that the owner had it there. We decided to rent it, and the price was good. And right now, an average rent out there, you're looking about $3,000. We just started off with $2,500 because the owner had it. He was willing to charge me $1,200 for it. So I didn't want to go out of the gate too heavy. Yeah. But we'll probably bump it up to $3,000, $3,500 in the coming months if we did. Yeah.
All right, we're down to last call. Okay. Go ahead.
Yes. Anybody else?
So maybe a way to go ahead, Tyler. Make it quick. Go ahead, sir.
How do we get in contact with you?
I think I sent it out to you. It's funny because we don't have a website because we're so busy trying to acquire properties, and that's been on our to-do list forever. But every single time we're like, revenue, what am I saying? Revenue generated activities only, and the website doesn't generate revenue. And I don't know if that's true or not, but we just haven't. So email and following us on social is one of the big things, even though we could be more active on social. But yeah.
So Tyler, Doris at Two Savvy Sisters, or Alice at twosavvysisters.com. So you can reach us either way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I will make sure they're in AnthroBank as our suppliers too, so you can see them there. And you guys can log in and update your profile if you so desire. So, well, okay. So let's put it this way. Maybe the best way to conclude this is I didn't even know this call would kind of go this direction, but I'm happy it did. And maybe we can have the Savvy Sisters back at some point and even go into some other things. Okay, so maybe that's the best way to leave it. So we do this thing out of the traction book where we do a rate the meeting. We're up to rate and wrap. Everybody go to the doc. You're not rating the speakers, you're rating the meeting. Scroll down, and we have about 3 minutes, so make it fast. You can go ahead and unmute everybody.
That would be Charmaine 10.
All right, Charmaine 10. Thank you, Charmaine. Yeah, and the method of this for Doris and Alice while people are typing, the theory is if people are a 7, if meeting participants are a 7 or below, they need to say what their reason is for rating it a 7 or below. And what you really want are meeting participants to get something off their chest and to get it out in the open, where now probably we need to talk about it later. But you don't want people leaving the meeting without saying something they needed to say. So that's the opportunity right now before we go. If it's 8 or above, you don't have to say anything about it. Tyler, what's your rating?
10.
All right, thanks, sir. I'm a 10. Pedro?
10. This is an expansion of corporate housing.
Darnell?
10. Lots of great information. Thank you, ladies.
Nice. Larry?
9, thanks.
Nice. Thank you, guys. Okay, anybody I missed? All right, we're rolling right up on it. Thank you so much, Doris and Alice. It's always a pleasure to see you guys, and wow, you do not disappoint. So it's our pleasure to be on the call with you, and thank you so much for taking the time.
All right.
And
Thank you.
with that, you guys, I will see you later. Have a great and prosperous week, and we will talk later.
Yeah. Have a good weekend.
Good. All the
Bye.
best.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.